Hello, Chef Leonard here, and today we're going to teach you the technique of braising, or called braiser in France. Today we're going to braise some incredible short ribs. We have here some nice boneless short ribs. Look at that marbleization of the meat, ready to be braised, some great flavor. And here's how we're going to do this. First thing is we're going to do just a little bit of oil, about maybe a tablespoon of nice oil. You want to do that into a hot pan, and we'll just swirl that around a bit. And then we're going to take our short ribs. You hear that beautiful sizzle? That's a great sound. That means your pan is ready. That means the fat is ready. So everything's hot and ready to go. And we're going to brown those on each side about probably 2 to 3 minutes. And while it's braising, we're going to add just a little bit of butter. Again, just to help that caramelization of the meat, really get that font going. Because what really helps make the sauce when you do the braising process is really what they call the font. That's the brown caramelization left on the pan. What's happening now is the meat is browning, all the sugars are coming out, the proteins are starting to congeal, and you get left with some beautiful flavors that when we deglaze and make the sauce really come true. So we're going to do a little basting. So we have the meat, look at the beautiful golden brown on this side, and again, we're just going to baste a little more with the fat. And our short ribs are almost ready there, that we're going to put them in the oven. But first thing we have to do, we're going to take them and put them in a plate and just reserve them. And then we're going to do the mirepoix. Mirepoix basically is French for flavoring base. In this case, we have some nice onion. We're going to put the onion in here. And we have some nice carrots. The usual ratio for a traditional mirepoix is 50% onions, 25% carrot, 25% celery. Now you notice we do have celery here for the mirepoix, but we're not going to add the celery till almost the end. And the reason is because, as you see here with the carrots and onions, we have some incredible caramelization going. The sugars from the onion are coming out. We're sweating them. The sugars from those carrots, all those great flavors are starting to develop. Celery is really composed mostly of water. So if we add the celery on the early stages of cooking the mirepoix, the water will start to seep out and our whole caramelization process really is ruined. So while those are cooking, we're going to add just a little bit of tomato paste. The tomato product does a couple of things. It adds some acid to the braising process, to the short ribs. It also develops nice flavor, and then it also gives the braising sauce a little consistency while it's cooking. So we add that tomato paste and we cook about another minute or two and really incorporate that, get it cooking. And look at those beautiful, if you can see there on the pan, those little brown spots there, that's the font. That's all the flavor. That's the flavor from the meat, flavor from the vegetables. Everything's just really starting to come together. And we're going to take just a little red wine. And this is called deglazing the pan. So the technique, part of a technique for a braise is deglazing the pan. So what happens is when that wine hits the pan, as we're cooking everything, all that font's starting to come up. So all the particles from the meat, all that beautiful caramelization now has released itself from the pan, going into the vegetables, into the sauce, and that's where you really get these great flavors. We're now going to add our celery. And again, you don't caramelize the celery, so you add that right at the very end. And what we're going to do is put our short ribs right on top of that mirepoix. Now, a key to braising is the process is a moist heat process. But you don't want to cover the short ribs with your stock. So we got some nice stock here, a little bit of veal and beef stock. What you want to do is fill the pan about 1/3 with your stock. What happens is if you fill the pan and cover the meat or submerge the meat and it starts to boil, you'll end up boiling your meat. It won't be a traditional braise. Braise is really the process that breaks down the muscles of a tougher piece of meat. It's going to make it very tender. But while this is cooking, the flavors develop, the sauce starts to come together, the vegetables flavor the sauce, and that's what really makes braise special. So you end up with a beautiful, tender piece of meat. You end up with a lot of great flavors going on. Now, one way you can do the braise is keep it on top of the stove and cover it. But one way we're going to do is we're actually going to put it in the oven. By putting it in the oven, it remains at a consistent temperature, never comes to a boil. So you put this in about a 325. We're going to braise it nice and slow. And then halfway through the braising process, you take the lid off, and then that sauce will start to develop, start to reduce, and you end up with an incredible product. Okay, so let's go check on our short ribs. So we have a nice oven here. It's been consistent heat, really braising the short ribs. We took the cover off about the halfway point and let it reduce a little, then just put the cover back on for the finish. And if you look here, look at those short ribs. Really rich color, and look at that sauce. It's developed, it's got great flavor. Every once in a while it's in the oven, what you want to do is baste them. You want to take that nice liquid and just baste it over the short ribs. But what you end up now is a beautiful, tender short rib that's very flavorful, rich, just incredible. And in fact, this dish is even far from complete, so what you need to do is watch our other technique video on how to make a braising sauce, and that will really show you how to finish these off. But again, pot roast, short ribs, any muscle meat that has a little toughness to it, brisket, braising is an incredible process, builds incredible flavor, and it's a melt-in-your-mouth experience. Okay, so today we're going to make a beautiful gravy for our short ribs. And the technique really is to take the braising sauce and make that into a beautiful gravy that's going to go over the meat, possibly your spätzle, your mashed potatoes, whatever starch you may serve. And people love gravy. Sauce is really the complement to a dish. A good sauce really can flavor, can really make it mouth-watering. So, and there's all types of sauces. Some people like sauces clean, so perhaps you would take this braising liquid, strain it, thicken the sauce a little, and just pour it over. I like to have sauces that have a little texture to them, and a little vegetable. So what I'm going to do is show you the technique of making a sauce with what I call a finishing mirepoix. So for my finishing mirepoix, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to put a little bit of butter into the pan here. And then we're going to put just a little bit of touch of oil, and that's just going to help prevent the butter from not smoking. Remember, butter has a very low smoking point, whole butter. So you can either use clarified butter or whole butter with just a little bit of oil. So I have some beautiful little onions here that I've cut and quartered. We have some nice carrots that have been cleaned, peeled, and cut in a nice rondeau cut. And what this does is this is going to flavor our sauce, but it's also going to be the vegetables to the braised dish as well. And one of the things nice about using a finishing mirepoix is, you know, you have the good flavors of it. It's attractive. It makes the sauce a little bit special. And I like to do something a little bit special versus just strain it and have this real smooth gravy, because I think it can really make the dish stand on its own. Simplicity and a little bit of elegance. So what we want to do is get those vegetables caramelizing a little. We just want to soften up the onions, get the carrots to soften up a bit. And while we're letting that happen, now again, we're going to add a little bit of celery. But remember, celery again, very water soluble, has a lot of water. So if I put it in too early, that water is going to leak out into the vegetables, and it won't help the caramelization or the browning process. So here we have the beautiful liquid that was from the braising. You see here the onions have all melted, the carrots are soft, so all that came together, and what you have is this beautiful rich stock. So you started with a beef and veal stock that had some pretty good flavor, but by the reduction in that oven, cooking with the short rib meat, all the flavor from that short rib came in, all the fat from the pan, from searing of the meat and the vegetables went into this sauce. So this is something incredibly special that's just going to be rich in flavor and has a very good depth to it. It's got a very meaty flavor. It's got a little slight vegetable flavor from the mirepoix, but it's just got some great things going on and becomes a great foundation for making your finished sauce. So you see here, we have our vegetables roasting. We're going to throw that celery in there, and then we're going to take our liquid and we're going to strain it right into the sauce. Now you may be asking yourself, why don't we use the vegetables from the braising liquid to begin with? Well, the reason why we don't want to do that is because they've been sitting in the meat and braising for a long time, and they really have gotten a little too soft. Their main property was to help season the stock, to help with the braise. So we wouldn't want to use those vegetables. Another way you can do it is during the braising process, you can put the meat in the pan with its stock, put it in the oven to start braising, and then you can take your finishing mirepoix and actually put it in halfway through the process or 3/4 through. And you look here, this is a natural reduction. You see this sauce, it's simmering, it's bubbling. It's really starting to come together, and this is the technique of making a sauce, is the evaporation. It's called a reduction. So what happens is as this sauce is simmering, it starts reducing. It starts to evaporate, it gets concentrated, and you got to be a little careful, because also what happens when this process starts is the concentration of the flavors really come together. So if you reduce too much, you can have with an overpowerful sauce, maybe a sauce that starts to get real salty, and that's why using a stock that has a good balance, it's not maybe overly strong, is a good thing. So you see here, nice simmering. We got the beautiful carrots. We got these onions that are just cooking in there. And now we're going to season a little. I'm going to add just a little bit of sage here, just a little bit. And when you add your herbs, you always want to add the herbs right at the end, because if you add the herbs too early, for example, if I did this in the beginning as they're simmering, what happens is the herbs can become very overcooked, very bitter. And we're going to take this sauce and we're going to finish it with just a little bit of butter. So the cold butter basically is going to act as a, it emulsifies the sauce, gives it a nice finish, a nice little sheen, really enriches it, gives it that great flavor. And you just let that start to simmer. And we're going to take our beautiful short ribs that we cooked. I mean, look at those, just incredible. Very tender, very melts in your mouth, nice caramelization, nice color, and that shows the braise went properly. Because people think that when you braise or do something, you just leave it in the oven, forget about it. That's not the case. You can over-braise meat. It can become still very chewy and almost a boiled consistency, and you don't want that. You want that beautiful color. You want the meat to have some firmness, but yet very gentle and very soft. And here we have that beautiful sauce. You see here it's reduced. A couple of other things you can do. You can add a slurry, a little cornstarch, a little wine, or a little stock to help thicken the sauce if you need to. You can use a roux, which is flour and butter that's cooked, or you can just do it natural. If you really did the braise properly and reduce the sauce, then you end up. And here we're going to pour this right over. I mean, look at all the flavors here. This to me in itself is a dish. So I've used a finished mirepoix, a little creative license here, but it really makes the dish special. You can serve any starch on the side, your potato puree, you can serve spätzle, but man, it doesn't get better than this. Beautiful braised short ribs, mirepoix gravy, just delicious, incredible, and something that will please everybody.